Hi, it's Jackie, and today I'm going to talk to you about food burnout, particularly for those that struggle with ARFID, and why it's really, really important to understand what food burnout is and how you can prevent it, what steps you need to be looking at taking. So I'm Jackie, and I work with a lot of parents and children with ARFID, and ARFID is obviously the avoidant food restricted intake disorder. So food burnout and what it is and what you need to be aware of. So with ARFID, where children or adults or a loved one is eating a really, really restricted variety of foods and has a very, very restricted diet, there will be one or two foods that they will be eating. And what happens is they are eating them and consuming them, if you think about it, morning, noon and night, day in, day out, day in, day out. With many of my clients, what I find happens is all of a sudden they hit a wall, bang, it's there, and that food's gone because they are completely and utterly exhausted by it. They have reached a point where they don't want to have it anymore. They need a break from it. The problem that we have with a person with ARFID is because they're eating such a few types of different foods or amounts of different foods, that when they give up that one accepted food, it can be a really precarious place to be. So food burnout is something that we want to try and avoid, or at least have an awareness of, so that you can start taking the recovery process that way, so that you can try and ensure that should it happen, there are already new foods or new smells or new sensations being introduced or exposed to the person, so that they are less fearful of them needing to try something else or add something else to their accepted list. So that in the event where they drop a food, there is something else there that they can actually turn to that can sustain them for that spate, for that time period, or for as long as they will no longer take another accepted food or take on that accepted food anymore. So exposure is so important, and I have a lot of parents that fear the exposure. They fear introducing new foods into the child's diet because they fear contamination, because they fear that the child will then start rejecting the food that they're already on, and the list will go on. And that's natural, because as a parent you're terrified that your child, or as an adult you're terrified that actually the person that you're trying to expose new foods, it's going to put them off eating altogether, and then where are you going to be? The thing is, if you don't start exposing them to something, then how do they become desensitized to the thing that is triggering them? How do they become desensitized to that smell, to that texture, to that look, to that gag response, to the anxiety, to the phobic response? How do you desensitize them from that if you aren't able to expose them to that, to drip feed it to them to the point of where you aren't toppling them over the edge? So food exposure is about doing things in a safe way for the person that is struggling with the disorder, not taking a fork and shoveling a chunk of peas down their throat and going, right, well, there we are, that's how we're going to expose you to new foods. It's doing it in a compassionate, caring kind of way, so that person can feel in control of allowing that food near them, of allowing that food onto their accepted list, on allowing that food onto their lips, on allowing that food onto their tongue, into their mouth, down their throat, into their being, allowing that food anywhere near them so that it doesn't elevate their anxiousness, their anxiety, their phobic response, and introduce that fear back into them. So exposure is not about re-traumatizing a person. Exposure is working in a way to desensitize them from the phobic response that they're struggling with. So food burnout and food exposure are massively, massively important to be aware of with ARFID, and why and what their role is, and how you can, if you're working with a practitioner, ensure that you understand what they're trying to do, so that you know how to come on board with that.